VoiceFlow have just dropped their brand new AI agent step, and we're going to be running through in this video exactly what it is, how it works, and actually find out if it is making AI agents faster, smarter, and easier to use. But does it actually live up to the promise, and how does it compare to platforms like n8n? Well, that's what we're going to cover in this video. So let's jump straight into the video. So as you can see here, we've got our agent. So we're just going to scroll out so you can see all of the different elements we're going to be building out in this video. We're going to be using it as an Apple use case, and it's going to be testing out the new AI agent step. And we're going to have three different ones, one which is a Q&A agent or customer support agent. We're going to have a customer details agent, so maybe they want to go in, update their email, their passcode, anything like that. We're going to do that as well. And we're going to cover maybe how to use a purchase product agent, so we can go through and provide some recommendations as well. So let's jump into a quick demo and see how it works. We're going to do run. We're going to do run test. We're going to come through. We're going to say, I want to purchase an iPhone. We'll send that off. We're going to be faced with this coordinating agent first, which if I just come back to the top here, that's going to route it either to our customer support agent in pink here. We've got our customer details action, i.e. updating customer details, or our product recommendation agent at the bottom here. We can say, I want the most powerful iPhone. We can send that off. And then what it will do is it will do an API request to our data table that we've got here, and it will really find what that best one is and provide that back to us. So as we can see here, it's basically gone through, done an API request, got all of the products back to us, done an analysis on those, find the most likely recommendation ones, trigger that API to get the information. And as you can see here, we've now got a card so we can go and purchase it nice and easy. But that's not the only thing that we're going to be running through today. As you can see here, we've also got a Q&A agent and the ability to update our details as well. So stay tuned and let's jump straight in. All of the resources are going to be in the link below. All you need to do is come across to our community. We'll come into Classroom. We'll come across to our AI agents. And then all we need to do is come into VoiceFlow folder and this first one here. And you'll have all the blueprints at the bottom. We want to download those blueprints. They'll come across as JSON files. We want to just come across into VoiceFlow, which is your low-code building platform for chatbots and some other agents. And we want to log in. And then what we want to do is come to the top right, import the file. We want to click on the file that we've got here. We'll do open. And then what it will do is it will open that agent for us so that we can go through and make all of the changes. So as you can see on the left here, all imported. And we're going to jump in. As you can see here, we'll go straight into where we've got the main workflow. And as we can see, all loaded up automatically and easy to go. But we're going to get rid of all of this apart from the folders so that we can go through and build this together from scratch and you can see how it works. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come into here and we're going to do message. We're going to say, welcome to Apple. We're then going to add another one in here. This is just going to be like our welcome messages. We'll call our AI agent Sophie here just so that we can see. And then what we're going to do is come across and we're going to capture. We're going to come up to the top hand corner and we're going to do entire user reply to last utterance. And that's basically going to capture anything that the customer says if we deploy it on the phone. Or if we put it into the chat, it's going to save everything that customer says. So this is the good part. This is where we're now going to go into our AI agent. So there's two ways of getting into it. You can pull across and you'll see AI agent there, or you can pull across on the left-hand side onto the screen. So we're going to need this as our master coordinator agent. And then what we're going to do is click onto the agent and then we'll be able to do new agent or search community. They've already got some examples on here. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the community builds these and starts to share them. They're not going to be on the template space at the moment because it's brand new, but I can imagine this is going to become very popular in the future as some of these agents get to be built out like n8n has as well. So what we're going to do today is just go through and do a new agent. We're going to come across to Co-ordinator. So this is how it looks when you first load it up. So you've got an instruction screen, you've got some functions, paths, and access to knowledge base. We've got some starter templates at the bottom here that if you click on them, it loads in some prompts. So if you've got something that's a customer support use case, you'd have it all ready to go already. So there's a really good video on the VoiceFlow YouTube channel. These two here, they're the ones that are covering the launch around these AI agents. So as you can see here, only 3 days old. So this stuff is brand new. So we've got a few different elements. So the functions, this is basically where it's kind of inbuilt elements that typically occur for AI agents. So as you can see, if we come across and do this little globe here, this is the community. So we've got all of these different templates that have been developed. We've got quite a few here from VoiceFlow themselves, so you can check order statuses, you can search Airtable, and then we've got some community ones here as well. I've noticed these don't always work 100% of the time, so just play around with them, see what works best. I think n8n is still ahead at this moment because of the integrations that they've got, and it's nice and easy to work with. But again, you can go through and create functions as you need it. What we are going to do is come down and do paths. So this is basically where we're going to use the AI to tell if it needs to go through a certain action. So again, relating it to like workflow or make.com, we'll have different scenarios or different workflows. What we'll be able to do is almost tell the AI when to trigger them. So as we can see here, we could do Q&A agent. And then what we'll be able to do is paste a description in here. So for example, this one could be that trigger this if a customer asks a question, wants to know anything about Apple. Again, this is how it goes through. We can say required variables. So what this will do is it will make sure that it captures this like an email address or something like that before it goes through and does the next step. We're going to be using that a bit later on with our customer details agent. So for now, we're going to leave the Q&A agent as is. We're going to come through and add another path, and we're going to call this our customer details agent. And we're going to come into our description and paste it in here. And what we're going to say for this agent is it's going to be authenticating the user, it's going to be getting user details, and it's also going to be updating them if the customer requests it. So that's great. That's our second one. We're going to come through and add another path, and we're going to call this one purchase a product, and we're going to put our description in there. So basically just saying if the customer is looking to purchase something, it'll be able to go through this workflow. Now we can give it access to the knowledge base, so it'll be able to answer any questions or queries, for example, here, or it's got a bit more context. But for this specific agent, we're going to turn that off just because we don't need it to be working for that coordination side. You can change the settings in here. So for example, using GPT-4 Mini is very cost effective. But you've got Claude, Gemini, DeepSeek, all of these different ones in here. So again, play around with it and find what works best for you. Temperature, again, what we find is the closer to 0, the more it's going to follow the prompt to be given a second word for word. The higher you give it to 1, the more likely it is to go off and do what it wants. So finding, as you've got here, around 3, is basically what their binary ground is for what the automatic one is. We've got maximum tokens in here. So again, remember, 1,000 tokens is 750 words. So just play around with that and see what works best for you. So now we can come into the instructions, and this is where we'll be able to give it like an AI agent prompt. So we're going to put it in here, and we're going to say that we've got a Q&A agent, we've got customer details agent, and a product recommendation agent. So it knows what they're doing. We've also said that it's got the authentication status. So we're going to go and add that in a minute, just to say that the customer can go through and authenticate as much as they want, and they can go through and get their details, because we're going to be using this to really delegate all of the actions that the customer will want to take. So we're going to close that down for now. So now we've got our AI agent and our intro. So if we just come through and do run, we'll do run test. What we'll be able to do is see that we've got Sophie, it comes up, and we're going to be able to type our response in. So we can say, I want to purchase a phone. We can send that off. And then what it will do is come to this AI agent. And now you can see that we've got 3 different actions that we can take that relate to that agent being able to trigger something. So again, that's why the coordination side is really interesting. Or think about it like in n8n when you're triggering different workflows as well. So now what we're going to go through and do is just build that out a bit more. So the first one we're going to do is come across and we're going to do our agent. We're going to be able to do a community support agent or Q&A agent. We're going to call it our Q&A agent. We'll give it a prompt so it just knows how to behave. Again, if it's able to go through and do it. We've not given any of these examples, but for example, if you wanted to go through and do any return orders, check tracking, anything like that, you'd be able to do that as well. And all you need to do is come through and add a path in here. But why we have turned it on is because we got access to the knowledge base. So all of the information that we're going to provide to it, so that it can go through and respond to any of the questions that come through. We don't need to change the prompt that's in there. That's all good to go. And again, that paths we can turn on if we wanted to do any checking of orders, anything like that. We would just add a path in here. Or again, you've got your pre-built ones in the community that you can leverage as well. We'll close that down and then we'll rename this to Q&A agent. And then what we'll be able to do is trigger this if we need it and go through and do it. One thing that I have found when playing around with the agents though, it really depends on when you need to use them. So if we come back into our other environment, for example, here, this is just using, for example, on the talk stage, the prompt, just to go through and respond to customers' questions. I think that works just as well. So I think there's going to be a real balance between when you need an agent to do something versus just getting like an AI LLM to really go through and answer some of the questions or queries. So it'd be interesting to see how VoiceFlow develops those two different elements, if it becomes really clear around the AI agent being the tooling side like we have in n8n, or if you've got the AI LLM side, which just goes through and maybe answers some questions or can be triggered at different stages. But let's jump straight back into what we're doing. So now we've got our AI agent for the Q&A. So what we're going to go through and just trigger this quickly. So we can do run test. We can say, where is Apple based? We're not going to get a response back because we haven't actually connected it through. It may be able to respond because of the information that it's got access to from its knowledge. But what we would want to do if we're going to add knowledge is come back. We want to back out of this. You would want to come down to knowledge. We want to come down to add data source. There you can add URLs, sitemaps, files, anything that you want in here, or Zendesk if you're doing something like customer support, you'll be able to do that as well. For sitemap, all you would need to do is click on there. And for example, Apple, you copy and paste that across, and then you do sitemap XML. Now, not all of the websites have it. Apple doesn't for this specific one. So again, play around with it when you're building your own use cases and find if it does have it. I have, however, copied all of the URLs that we're going to be using today. I can just paste them in there. And as you can see at the bottom, we can change the refresh rate. So if we want it daily, weekly, monthly, we can do that. And you can add them to a folder if you want to do that as well. If you click import, what we'll do is start to scrape all of the data on that website. And then if we just open this up, it will go green in a bit. So that means it's scraped all of the information. And you'll see what's called chunks. So it's broken down the information on that website. So it's got easier access to the information so it can recall it when it needs to in the conversation. As you can see here, it's got a few ticks. So as you can see, this is some of the chunks. So it's gone through and broken it down. For this one here, the iPhone 16, it's broken it down into 15 different chunks to be able to recall the information as and when it needs it in the workflow. But let's jump back into our agents and start building out the rest. So let's go through and do our customer details agent. So we're going to come through and do agent. Now, what we're going to do here, well, if we come down to the original version, what we're basically saying is that we're going to allow the customer to authenticate themselves, get their user details, and be able to update them all automatically using Airtable as the database. So if we come across to Airtable, we'll come across to customers. As you can see here, we've just got some dummy data around the customers. So they'll be able to update any of this, recall it, all if they're authenticated using this passcode. So if we come back into our AI agent, we're going to need a few different steps. So the first one, we're going to come into our AI agent. We're going to do a new agent. We're going to give it its title, and then we're going to paste its prompt in here, or its instructions, as they call it in VoiceFlow. We're going to add 3 different paths in here. We're going to call the first one authenticate user. We're going to add our prompt in here. So basically just saying that we need some of the information to proceed. And this is where we're going to come through and do user email. And this is one of the really cool things about the AI agent. As you can see here, the variable we're basically going to be describing to the AI agent what it is. So it can go through and actually identify it whilst it's having that conversation with the customer and dynamically pick it out so that we can use it a bit later on. What we're also going to do is add passcode. So again, if you're ever needing to add your own passcode, you just come through and do create a variable and it'll enable you to do that. We just loaded up the blueprint. That's why it's already here. And we'll paste the prompt in there just around what it's trying to do and how it's trying to output the information. By means, this is not the gold standard for some of the prompting we're doing today. We're just running through it quite quickly to show you some of the use cases around the AI agent. The next one, we're going to be doing get user details. We're going to put a prompt in there. We're going to say that we need the mail, user email. And again, we're going to put the prompt in the bottom here, basically just saying that it needs to find out this information before we can go through. And we've also said that they need to be authenticated, again, just to make sure that we're getting that right person accessing that right information in the database. We can come through and do our third and final path. And we're going to call this update user details. And we're going to paste our prompt in here. That basically just says we're going to go through and update this as and when needed by the customer, triggering maybe they want their phone number, passcode, email address, anything like that updated in the system. So again, we're going to come through and add some of these required variables, so the ones that the LLM can automatically identify for us. We're going to do our user email first. We'll add our prompt in there. We'll come through and do our next one. We'll do phone number and we'll paste it in here. We'll come through and add our next one. We'll do passcode. We'll add our prompt in there, and then we're going to do a new one, which we've called new details. So this is the new information we want the user to provide us with. So for example, here, if they've got a new email, phone number, passcode, that's what we're going to go through and get from them. And we're going to double check with them through a confirmation step that that's exactly what they want that new field to be before we go and complete the execution. The last step we're going to do is field to update. So again, these are just variables that we've already got because we're using the template, but we're basically saying that we need phone number, passcode, or email address. And this matches what we've got as our titles in Airtable, so we can go through and use it in here as well. We don't need to give it access to the knowledge base. We've already done that before. Again, we're going to keep it on 04 mini so they can go through and use it. Again, this is where I've played around with it and I found the function for searching Airtable. It works some of the time, not 100% of the time. I think this is just where it's going to get better with time for this sort of capabilities. I think n8n is still a little bit ahead for this functionality, for being able to interact with different applications. But again, this has only been around for 4 days, 3 days. So I think there's lots of space to grow for this platform through VoiceFlow. So we're going to close that down. We'll just rename this to customer details agent, and then we'll just give this the other orange color. Now what we're going to need to go through and do is give it an API step. So again, you can either pull through and we can do developer and API, or you can always pull it across from the left-hand side here, API, and pull across. We're going to need that next one as well anyway, so we might as well just pull all three across. So we've got them ready to go because all of these are going to need an API step. So the first one we're going to do here is around authenticating the user. So we'll just call this authentication. We're going to come in here and we need a URL. So how do we do that? Well, we need to come into our Airtable account. We're going to come up to the top. We're going to do help. We're going to do API documentation. That's going to load up this screen for us. As you can see here, we've now got lots of information that's starting to appear in different sections. So in this case, you've got the authentication. We're going to need to do an authorization as well as an API, an authorization sort of API key. We've got some information here. This is all around the products. So we're going to need to come a bit further down. And what we'll be able to do is find our customers. So if we keep coming down, that's where we've got it here. So we can now come through and we can see all of this information. So what are we looking for? Well, we're going to need all of this up to customers. And then we'll do question mark. We're going to do copy, and then we're going to paste in our URL. Now there's a second half that we're going to need, so I'm just going to copy that across. And basically what we're specifying is the filter that we're going to be using, which is going to be the email address field that we've got in our Airtable, and is going to be the user's email that we're going to be capturing. The next stage is the authentication. So we're going to come across, we're going to do a new header, we're going to do authorization, and then we're going to need a value for that. So to do that, we're going to come back into our Airtable account. We're going to come to the top right. We're going to do Builders Hub. We're then going to be loaded up with this screen here. We're going to do Create a Token. We're going to call this VoiceFlow AI Agent YouTube Demo. We're going to add in all of the ones in here for the different scopes. The only ones that you really need it to have are the read, write for data records, as well as the schema-based read and write. They're the fundamental ones that you need. The rest you can add in as much as you want. And then we need to add in our base. So what we do is click on that, search for our base, and then we'll be able to add that in there, create a token, and we'll get our token added in here. So we'll be able to copy that, come back into our AI agent. We need to do bearer, and then we're going to do paste. How do we know that? Well, if we come back into our documentation, as you can see here, we've got authorization bearer, and then our API token. So that's all good to go. But what we're also going to do is capture the response. So we're just going to add in our failure path there, just in case we have any issues, and we'll just pull these down for now. So if we give this a quick test, we'll be able to do email. So if we come back into our database, we'll just copy this example email in here. We'll paste and send that across. As you can see, we're now being able to recall all of the information, which is great. What we also want to do is capture the response. And this is one of the things I love about VoiceFlow, is we can come in here and we could click on ID. We could do customer ID, and it's going to save it on the right-hand side here so we can use it in the future. We can add in some more, so maybe we want the email address as well. So we can do customer, we can do user email. We can add in phone numbers. So again, just search for phone number, or you can add your own one in there if you want to. And we're going to do passcode as well. Again, these are all variables that we've already specified. You just need to go through and add them yourself. So now, for example, if we do send and we do reuse last value, that'll all go through and we'll have saved all of these values into here as well. So now what do we need to do? Well, to authenticate it, we're going to need to double check what they've given us is exactly the same as the information that we've got stored away. And to do that, we're going to need to come back to passcode. We just need to change this to Airtable passcode. And then what we're going to do is come across, we're going to do logic, we're going to do an if condition. And then what we're going to say is business logic. We're going to do two paths. We're going to say if passcode equals Airtable passcode. So what this is basically going to do is going to test and look against the two passcodes and see if they're exactly the same. If they are, we're going to go off and say that they're authenticated. If it's not, we're going to say that they're not authenticated and there's an issue. For time, I'm just going to copy these two steps across because it's very simple steps. All we're basically saying in here is if we add these together, is basically they are authenticated or they're not authenticated. And we're just saving that as a new variable for their status around that authentication status. And then all we need to do is connect this back up to our AI agent. So there we go. Now we're all connected back up to our AI agent, but we're going to need to go through and change that block at some point. We're going to leave it as is for now. So now if I come through, what we'll be able to do is run. We're going to say authenticate user. What this will do is it should take us from here down to our customer support agent. So we're going to need email address and passcode. So in this case, we'll just copy them across, we'll paste, and we'll do our highly secure passcode of test123. We'll send that off. And then what we should do is get the authenticated message that comes back because it's actually correct. Now what we can do is just test this again. So if we do run, we'll copy our email address. And then what we're going to do is give it a wrong value. So we'll say authenticate user. We're just saying it like this, nice and easy, because it makes sure that we can go through and do it. Again, the demo that we did a bit earlier shows how easy it is to go through and do the different parts. So for example, here we can say passcode and test 5678. We just give it a random number. What it should do is go through and see that it's not matching. So it's not authenticated. So there we go. That's how easy it is to make sure that we're all authenticated to go through and make some changes. Brilliant. So now we're going to go through and basically find the customer details. So what we're going to do is come into our API request. We're going to paste in what we've got here, which is we basically need the workspace or the table ID that we've got in here. If you're ever looking for it in your URL, it's exactly the same as the one that you've got up here, and that's your table ID. So if you ever need to find it, that's where it is. But we've also got it in the documentation that we found a bit earlier. So again, we're going to be using that as we did a bit earlier on as well. So we're searching for the user's email address. We're saying that they've been authenticated. We're going to need to go through and add in our authorization and then bearer. And then we're going to come back into our hub. We're going to copy this and we're going to paste it in there. So we've got our API key ready to go. Just move that one out of the way, nice and easy. And then what we're going to do is capture all of the responses that come through. So if we reuse the last value, as we can see here, we're basically going to capture ID, customer ID. We're going to capture full name. We're going to capture email. We'll capture phone. We'll capture their passcode. And then what we'll be able to do is just to show this back to the user, we can do talk message. And then we just need to come in here. And then I'm going to paste it across so it's nice and easy. But again, these are just variables. So to add them in, all you need to do is come back and then do full and then name. And it would add it in there for you automatically. So that's how easy it is to add it in. The step after this, we can go and connect it back to our customer support agent, or we can go back and we're going to give it some anything else agent a bit later on. So let's go through to the next stage, which is going to be all about updating the user details. It looks like these two nodes are in the wrong space. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, the first things first is we're going to actually need to get rid of that. We're going to come down here. We're going to do logic. We're going to do if statement. And then what we're going to do is business logic, and we're going to do paths. We're going to do condition, and then we're going to add 3 different conditions in here with an else path as well. So what are the conditions going to be? Well, we want field to update. That's either going to be our email address or phone number. So we'll come in here and then we'll do phone. And then the next one here will just be our passcode. So we'll just add that in there, passcode. So there we go. So now what's going to happen is our AI agent is going to be checking beforehand to see what we want to update. Because again, one of the great features in here is it's going to be capturing this information beforehand. Before it requests to go and do this update, we're going to be asking and capturing all of this information to go through and execute the action. So now what we need to be able to do is go through and complete this actual API request. So we're going to be using patch instead of get because we're going to be updating information. So to do that, we want to come back into our AI agent. We're going to come across to API and we're going to need our URL. So we're going to come back into our documentation that you can see here. We're going to come a bit further down and you'll be able to see that we'll be able to update or upset customer records. We're going to copy across this field here. We're going to come back into our AI agent and we're going to paste that in there. The only thing we also need to add in is forward slash and then ID, and we're going to do customer ID. Because what this is going to do is it's going to filter on that customer ID that we extracted earlier through the authentication to be able to do this. So we're going to do post. And then what we're going to do is headers. Again, we need our authorization, and then we'll come back into our account, copy, and then paste. The other one we're going to need as well is to come in here and we're going to need content type. Because if we come back into our documentation, as you can see here, we've got content type, and then we've got application/JSON. So we just need to add that in the bottom here as well. And now what we're going to go through is send off the information that we need. So you've got the different information. You can do this in different ways if you want to. I'm going to be using the raw version today. And what we're basically going to specify is in here all of the information as the email address, because that's the same naming convention as we've got in here, as well as what we've got in our new details, because that's what we've requested to update as a user. We're going to capture the response. We'll give this a quick test. For customer ID, we just need to capture one. So we'll come down here and do record ID. We'll paste in there. New details, we'll say test 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is going to go through and update the email address. So if we send that off, it says it's not found. That's because we had it as post and we need it as patch. So now if we send it off, what we should be able to do is reuse the last values and it should come back and tell us all the information. And now if we come back into our Airtable, we should now have that updated to test. So there you go, able to send that off, that information. We're just going to change that field back. So if we come into here, we'll just change that back. And then what we'll be able to do is come back into our AI agent and then we'll capture all of this information. So full name, we can do email, we can do phone, we can do passcode. And then what we'll be able to do is just come across and we'll add a quick field in here with a message. What this will basically say is just regurgitate all of that information back to that individual. So we'll be able to update it and then say what those new fields are. So what we're going to do is just copy this and then we're going to paste it 3 times because all we're going to be changing is one specific part, which is around the JSON body that we're going to be sending off in our API request. So we'll connect these up and then all we need to do is come in here and then we'll change this to phone number because in our database, we've got phone number. And then we'll come into here as well and we'll change this last one from email address into passcode. So we'll paste that in there as well. So now what we'll be able to do is update all of these fields if we've got access to it and we've been authenticated. So now we've got a customer support agent ready to go. We can go through and do run. We can go through and we can say, I want to update my passcode. We'll be able to send this off. And now what it should do is ask us to be authenticated. So yep, there we go. We can say, please provide email address and passcode. So we'll come in here, we'll grab this, we'll paste in there and passcode. Actually, just to show you as well. So if I send just the email off, because we've said both of them are required, as you can see here, it comes back and demands to have that passcode as well. So we'll copy and we'll paste in there. What it will now be able to do is go off and get that information. So as you can see, all authenticated. It's now come back and asked what that code should be. So we'll do alpha 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. And then what we'll be able to do is come back, say, yes, we're definitely happy with that. And now what it should do is come back down to the bottom here. So we've got an error there. That's just because I've put it as a variable. It shouldn't be a variable. It's just plain text. So it should say phone number. And then we need passcode just as passcode. So if we give this a quick test again, we'll go through and we'll do run. We'll do run once. We'll say we'll come across and get our passcode. And then we'll also get our email address as well. We'll cut that and we'll say authenticate user to update details. We'll send that off. And then what we should do is get a response back asking for the information. So we'll say this is it. We should be all good to go. Now what it should do is come back and ask us for that information again. So we'll say new passcode required. We can send that off. Now what it will say is alpha 1, 2, 3, 4. And then what it should do is come back and say, yes, we are happy with that. and we shouldn't have the error like we did last time. So as you can see there, it's now gone through and updated it. So if we come back into our database, as you can see there, we've now got our new passcode all ready to go, nice and easy. The next stage we're going to be doing is our product recommendation agent. So we're going to come up here, we're going to grab this, we're going to pull it down. So again, this is going to be really interesting, this one, because what we're going to do is use it in two different ways compared to the other ones that we've done before. So if we come down here, we're going to come in, we're going to do new agent. We're going to call it product recommendation agent. We're going to paste our prompt in there. Now, this is where it's really interesting. Now, I'm not going to be using it today, but in the demo video that I showed you in here, what they do show is you being able to integrate with platforms like Shopify. So if we come into here, you can get a customer ID, product ID. We're going to be going through and using it manually, just because I found some of them, again, just a bit temperamental, but I think this will massively improve in the future. We are going to turn on the knowledge base here, but what we're going to do is give it a really clear prompt that basically says we're going to use this as a fallback, because as you saw in the demo a bit earlier, we want to send through some of that information so that customer can go through and see a product versus just getting lots of text thrown back at them. So what we're going to say is a new path. We're going to call it product recommendations with images, and then we'll give it our prompt and we'll paste that in there. And then we're going to call desired product, because what we're basically saying is we're going to capture a request from that user for what they're looking for. And we're going to leave that blank this time, just so you can see how it works. Again, using ChatGPT 4o for this case, and we're going to close that down. So the next step we're going to do is we're going to come through and we're going to do API. And what we're going to need to do is add in our URL in here. So to do that, we want to come back into our database. We're going to come up to the top to the first table that we have, which is our products. We want to find the one that is list all of the products, which I think is the next one up here. So there we go. So as we can see here, if we copy this, this is going to list all of the products that we have back to us. So if we come in here and paste, if we add in our authorization header and we copy across our API key again, what we'll be able to do is come through and give it a quick test. So now if I do send, it will only come back with the 3 that we requested, because as you can see at the top here, we've basically said that it's got a maximum of 3 that it can return. What we can do there is eliminate this. And then what we'll be able to do is have all of the products returned to us. So again, depending on the use case that you're doing, this is where it can be really useful to have it all returned. There's lots of other use cases out there that show your ability to actually integrate, have JavaScript go through and analyze that. We're not going to be using that today. We're going to be using it a bit more manual just for time to show you how it works. So as you can see there, we've got the iPhone 16 Pro. We've got all of the information around some of the pictures, the products. This is the 16. We've got the MacBook Air. If we come a bit further down, we've got the MacBook Pro in here. So again, lots of information that we can use. What I'm going to do though is just paste the version that we've got in from our other agent, just because if I delete that and connect it to this agent, what we will see is that just for time, just for this, I've basically gone through and we've stored all of the fields in a variable. So for example, if I just send this off, what we'll be able to see is that all of the product names, product notes, and IDs for those products have just been saved as variables so that we can use them quick and easy in the future versus using any of the JavaScript. But again, lots of different ways out there. Just see what works best for you. What we are going to do though is come across. We're going to do the next step. We're going to do set. We're going to be using the variables. So variables, and we're going to use prompt. We're going to say recommendation, create a recommendation. Now the prompt that's in here, if you use the template, it'll be all ready to go. If not, I'll pause here. The system one is empty, but this is how we're using it. Again, these are just all of the IDs of the products that we're using here. So there's lots of different ways that you could run through and do this. If you only wanted the top 3 to be returned, you could do that. If you wanted JavaScript to go through it and filter it down, you can do that as well. Again, this is just a really quick way to show you how to do it. So now what we can do is come through and we're just going to do recommended ID. There we go, recommended ID. And what this is basically doing is storing the ID of that recommended product. The next thing we're going to do is our API request part 2, which is going to return all of the information around that specific product. So as you can see here, we're capturing the product name and everything like that. So if I just do send, we can do a recommended ID. So if I come back into our database, we'll get the ID of the iPhone 16 Pro here, as you can see. We'll paste that in there, we'll do send. And as you can see, it's returning all of the information around the URL of the image that we've got in there. We've got the product image, the cost, the production name, all of those notes in there as well. So we'll be able to use that and show that to the user. Now, how do we show it to the user? Well, what we're going to do is come through to here. We're going to come across to card. We're going to paste that in there. And then what we're going to do is turn into link. And then we want to do URL. And we're going to do recommended URL. We're going to do recommended and then name. And then we can add some fields in here like recommended notes. So that's just going to be the description. We can do cost in there, and we're going to do recommended URL. We're going to change this one actually to just image. So that's going to be the recommended image. And we can add the button in here. So this is going to be order now. And then we can add an action in there. And all this is going to do is open the URL. So that'll be our recommended URL. And that will take us to the web page like we showed in the demo, so that a customer can go through and actually purchase it straight away. But maybe they need a little reassurance beforehand. So that's where we can come through and just connect this up. And we can do a new prompt. And we can do provide recommend prompt. But again, this is what it looks like so that you can see. We're basically saying that it's an Apple customer support expert. It's got around 100 words that it can send back to a customer at any one time. And it's been given all of the information around that specific product. And what it's going to do is, if we show here, it's going to go through and basically provide an AI step beforehand. As you can see here, that basically says what the product is and provides that recommendation. So now if we go through and give this a quick test, what we'll be able to do is come back to the top. We can do run once. We'll just play it from here. We'll say, I want to purchase a phone. What it will do is it will tell me that we automatically know it's a purchase recommendation. As we can see here, it's got that question up front. So again, that routing agent, even within the product recommendation, so it knows what to do. We can say, I want the most powerful iPhone available. We can send that off. What it will do is it will trigger the request. So we'll walk through this step by step just in documentation so you can see it. And we'll be able to get the output that we're looking for here. So if we come back, what we'll see is if we come a bit further to the top here. So we've basically said that we want the most powerful iPhone available. We've then used the AI agent to trigger this API step, which is pulling back all of the information around all of the products, as you can see here. So for example, the 10 products that we've got the iPhone Pro 16, MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, iPad Pro, normal iPad, Series 9 watch, Series Ultra 2 watch, and the AirPods Pro with all of their notes in there as well. So it's basically capturing all of this information up front. What it's then gone through and done is set this information as a recommendation. So it's basically analyzed it, and now it's saying that we recommend that the iPhone 16 Pro is the best thing for that customer. So it's gone through, captured all this information, it's then triggered this API request, and now we've been able to pull all that information back so that we could use it in here. And that's where this AI prompt step here has basically understood what the recommendation is and gone through and provided this step up the top here. So now if we click on the order now link, it takes us straight through to be able to buy an iPhone, and that is so great for increasing your conversion, especially on e-commerce websites, because it's nice and easy for the customer to see exactly how it works. Now we've got one last step to go, so we're going to come up to the top here, which is just going to be tidying it up for us. And we're going to copy these across, and we'll paste them in here. There we go. So now we can put that in there. So basically this is going to be our fallback step that says, is there anything else we can do? Anything else we can help with? If so, yep, brilliant. We're going to come back down to our AI agent here, the control agent, so that we can trigger another workflow. If not, we're going to say goodbye and end the chat. And if we've got any errors, messages, we're going to copy this and we're going to bring it up to the top here. And what we'll basically say is, oops, there was an error. Is there anything else I can do to try and help, just to provide that really great customer experience? So now what I'll do is just come to the end of each one. So where we've got these blocks, we're going to be tying that back to anything else. So we can say main workflow, anything else. And if you've not done this before, you pull across actions, go to block, and we'll do anything else. We can give it a test. We'll send that off. What it will do is it'll bring us down to the recommendations. We can say, yes, I want the most powerful one. So we'll send that off. And then what it will be able to do is retrieve the information, because it's going to be doing this API request again to be able to get that information. It's going to bring it back to us. And now we can say that we've got the Air 3 if we want something nice and light, or we can go through and do the MacBook Pro if we wanted to. So if we come back to products, as you can see here, we've got all of this information ready to go. So we can use that if we needed it. Again, we can do order now, and that's where it'll take us through to that link. So it'd be all good to go. What we are going to do though is, as you can see here, we've now got that step that's going to take us back to the anything else. We can say, yes, there is something that we want help with. We can say, how can I help? We can say, where is Apple located? We can send that off. It's going to bring us to our customer support agent. Again, this is the one I think is probably just more of a AI that you're using in this sort of time frame with a prompt versus maybe needing an AI agent for this questioning queries. It's probably where it's routing it off to customer support or finding products. That's probably how I would use it. So then if we go through and do the last and final test, which is going to be going through and just updating our details as well, we can come through and we can give it a quick test. So let's go and get one of the other customers that we haven't used before. So we can use this Apple. We're going to say, I want to change my passcode. We can send that off. As you can see there, it's triggered it automatically. So it's going to need to update with our current passcode to be able to do it. We can say the email is that, and we need our passcode, which is Apple 12. So we can say, and Apple 12, it will send that off. What it should do is come back and say we're authenticated, which it does, which is great. We can say Steve Jobs 12. We can send that off. What it will do is say yes. We can send it off. And what it will be able to do is go through and update that request. So now if we come back into our database, there we go. We can see it's all updated. So that's really nice, really easy. We can say, yes, there is something else. We can go, I want to change my email. We can send that off. It should bring us back down to that changing that customer agent in a step as well. So we can say apple.hq@gmail.com is the new email address. We should get a question that comes through, and there we go. What we should do is get apple@hq. So now if we come back across, there you go, apple@hq, it's already done it. So that's how quick and easy it is to go through and do it. Now, we've played around with the AI agents quite a bit in this video, but what do I really think of it? Well, I think it's still early days with this for VoiceFlow. I think they've definitely got some great fundamental capabilities there. I still think n8n is my preference for using some of these AI agents. VoiceFlow is very good for the chatbot side to be able to develop them and deploy them. But for me, I think n8n still wins for using some of the AI agents, but this team has got a great base and some great experience behind them. So I'm sure that they'll be catching up and trying to push ahead in the short term very quickly. That's been a really quick video just on how to use some of the AI agents. All of the resources are in the links below. Stay tuned for more around AI agents and have a great day.